You have been in the fog long enough that you stopped calling it fog. At some point in the last several weeks, the slow dissolution of Mercury retrograde in Pisces became the baseline, became what normal felt like, became the medium through which you moved without noticing anymore that the medium was unusually thick. Sentences that formed and then dissolved before they reached completion. Meanings that arrived sideways through dreams and intuitions rather than through direct thought. The particular texture of trying to say something precise in water. You adapted, you circled, you learned to communicate in the way water communicates, which is by surrounding rather than striking, by finding the path of least resistance rather than the most direct line. That is over tonight. At 11:22 p.m. Eastern Time, Mercury left Pisces and entered Aries. The transition is not gradual. There is no middle territory between the last degree of the most dissolving sign in the zodiac and the first degree of the most direct. The shift is immediate. The fog is over. Mercury in Aries does not consider, it arrives. Ideas appear fully formed and want to be spoken the moment they exist. The filter that Pisces maintained, the one that softened every statement before it reached the mouth, that cushioned every sharp edge with the understanding that perhaps there are other valid perspectives, that turned every assertion into a question, is gone. In its place is the specific quality of the warrior's house. And in the warrior's house, Mercury does not swallow what it knows. It says it. The ancient astrologers who mapped Mercury's relationship to the signs understood Aries as what they called the planet's accidental dignity, a place where Mercury did not rule and was not exalted, but operated with a specific force that was different from its behavior anywhere else in the zodiac. Because Aries is Mars's sign, and when Mercury is a guest in Mars's house, it operates by Mars's rules. Mars's rules are simple. Know what you want, move directly toward it. Do not soften the trajectory. The result, when Mercury is living in those rules, is communication of a quality most people spend the rest of the year wishing they had the nerve for. Direct, unqualified, unambiguous. The thing you actually think, arriving in the room before you have had time to decide whether it would be better to keep it to yourself. Here is the specific gift this transit is offering that most readings will not acknowledge with the clarity it deserves. There is a sentence you have been not saying for a very long time. It vibrates in your bones at 3 a.m. when the managing self has gone to sleep and what is left is the one who knows without qualification. The sentence about what you actually need, the sentence about what you are no longer willing to accept. The sentence about the direction you have decided to move that you have been presenting as a tentative possibility rather than the decided fact it already is in your nervous system. Mercury in Pisces, especially retrograde in Pisces, is the worst possible environment for that sentence. Pisces dissolves it back into feeling before it can become words, before it can become sound that another person can hear and respond to. Mercury in Aries is the opposite environment. It is the one where that sentence wants to leave your body and enter the room. The French have an expression for the witty or devastating thing you think of after the conversation has already ended. The perfect response that arrived too late. Mercury in Pisces lives in that space. Mercury in Aries lives in the opposite space. The response arrives before the conversation has begun. The sentence exists in the room before you decided to speak it. NSSG Club wrote about this transit with a phrase I want you to hold. Aries is an energy that is direct, fast, and completely unfiltered. Maybe even too much. Maybe even too much. That is the shadow and the gift in the same clause. Because the filter does two things. It protects you from saying things that are true, but timed badly. And it protects you from saying things that are true, but cruel in their delivery. The filter is not always your enemy. But it is also the thing that has kept the most important sentences from reaching the people who most needed to hear them. Mercury in Aries asks you to navigate that distinction with more precision than you have probably managed before. Not no filter. A sharper filter. One that is quick enough to keep up with the speed of Aries thinking. The filter that asks not, is this true, but is this the right way to say what is true? Now let me tell you about the specific terrain Mercury is entering. Because this is not an empty Aries. On April 9th, Mars arrived in Aries, his home sign, the place where his fire burns without anything foreign dampening it. Mars has been building energy in Aries for 5 days before Mercury arrived tonight. The house is already warm. There is already a fire in the room Mercury just walked into. And in that room, waiting at 5 degrees of Aries, is Saturn. Saturn, the planet that governs consequences, that governs the weight of what gets committed to and the permanence of what gets spoken. Saturn in Aries is not a comfortable planet. Saturn in its fall in Aries is Saturn stripped of the usual restraint the other signs provide. It is Saturn with fire behind it, the taskmaster in the warrior's house. What this means for the week ahead is this: Mercury did not walk into an empty room. It walked into a room that already contained the fire and the consequence. And the combination of all three, fire and messenger and consequence in the same space, is heading toward an exact triple conjunction on April 20th. 6 days from tonight. Astrology King describes this triple conjunction as extremely potent, reaching a minimum orb of 0 degrees and 23 minutes, effective from April 18th through April 21st with dramatic intensity. Mercury, the word; Mars, the force behind the word; Saturn, the weight of the word. All three at the same degree. Ascent Astrology gave this configuration one of the most accurate descriptions I have encountered. 3 very different personalities stuck in the same room. Mars is pacing and ready to act. Saturn is sitting in the corner with a clipboard, listing risks and consequences. Mercury is in the middle, trying to make a call before the moment passes. The pressure builds quickly because no one wants to wait. Mars is in charge here. He is strong, fast, and not interested in delays in the sign of Aries. And from Siren Astro, the warning that every person who uses language as their primary instrument of relationship needs to hear this week. Mercury-Mars conjunctions are historically correlated with arguments that escalate fast, emails sent in anger, and the particular regret that comes from saying something true, but saying it cruelly. The Aries placement amplifies both the courage and the collateral damage. Your task this week is not to suppress this energy, it is to choose your target wisely, because that is the precise distinction Mercury in Aries demands. Not silence, not diplomacy, precision. The surgeon's certainty that knows which tissue to cut and which to leave intact. The knife that knows the difference between the incision that heals and the wound that does not need to be made. Let me show you the specific timeline so you can move through this transit with the intelligence it deserves rather than simply being moved by it. The window breaks into 3 phases. The first phase, April 14th through 16th, is the Mercury-Neptune window. Mercury enters Aries and immediately finds Neptune in the early degrees. The Mercury-Neptune conjunction perfects on April 16th. Moon Omens describes this window as nurturing imagination and fantasy, heightening spiritual depth and artistic inspiration while bringing challenges with linear and rational thought processes. This is not the week for the hard conversation. This is the week for the idea that has been trying to form since the retrograde began. The creative beginning, the intuitive word. Speak the vision now, while Neptune softens it, just enough to be received. The second phase, April 17th through 19th, is the build toward the triple conjunction. Mercury clears Neptune and begins to approach Mars and Saturn. The new moon in Aries occurs on April 17th, conjunct Chiron. This is the most concentrated initiation energy of the entire month. The seed is being planted in fire. What you begin in this window carries the wound of the old story and the courage of the new one simultaneously. This is when the hard conversation becomes possible that was not possible during the fog. The third phase, April 20th and 21, is the triple conjunction itself. Mercury, Mars, Saturn at 7 to 8 degrees of Aries. This is simultaneously the most powerful and the most dangerous 48 hours of the entire Mercury in Aries transit. Powerful because the energy of 3 planets combining at the same degree in the warrior's sign creates a force of communication that can move things that have been stationary for months. Dangerous because that same force, applied without intention, produces what Astrology King describes as harsh words, cruelty, abuse, and the particular escalation of an argument that was already simmering. Ascent Astrology adds, speak with intention and back your words with clear follow-through. Saying too much too soon can get you into trouble. Be careful you do not back yourself into a corner by taking on too much. This is the week where what you say in the heat of the moment determines what you have to live with in the cool of the months that follow. Every word uttered under the triple conjunction carries the weight of Saturn behind it. Saturn does not let things go. Saturn holds what is spoken in the permanent record. The thing you say in anger on April 20th will still be the thing you said on April 20th in October, when you would give anything for it to have been otherwise. And yet, and this is the part that nobody is telling you with the emphasis it deserves, for every person in your life who has been swallowing the sentence that needed to be spoken, for every person who has been managing the relationship through diplomacy when the relationship needed directness, for every person who has been calling their silence patience when it was actually fear wearing patience's clothes, Mercury in Aries, and especially the triple conjunction of April 20th, is not the enemy, it is the permission slip, because the things that have been held back too long are not less dangerous for being held. They do not become safer through continued silence. They ferment, they develop pressure, and pressure, when it finally releases, is less precise than a carefully spoken direct sentence during a transit that supports exactly that kind of speech. The strange heaviness behind your ribs, the tightening in the jaw that arrives every time a certain subject approaches in conversation. The sentence that forms and then gets swallowed back down because the moment does not feel right. The moment that has not felt right for 3 months or 6 months or a year, because Mercury in Pisces was the wrong environment and the retrograde was the wrong time, and something was always making the timing just slightly off. The timing is right now. Mercury is in Aries. The fog is over. The filter is thinner. The warrior's house is the exact environment that sentence was waiting for. Here is the practice for the next 18 days of Mercury in Aries. It is divided by the 3 phases I described. During the Neptune window, write down the thing that has been trying to form. Not speak it yet. Write it. Let the Neptune intuition help the shape of it solidify before the fire of the Mars conjunction burns away the subtlety you need. During the second phase, approaching the new moon in Aries on April 17th, decide who needs to hear it. Not everyone, the specific person. The specific relationship where the unspoken thing has accumulated the most weight. Name the conversation you are going to have, not in advance to them, in advance to yourself. Because Mercury in Aries rewards the person who knows where they are going before they start moving, and punishes the one who charges forward without a direction and burns everything in their path. During the triple conjunction on April 20th and 21st, have the conversation, or make the decision, or write the message that has been drafting itself in the back of your mind since the retrograde began. Let the energy of Mercury and Mars and Saturn behind the words do what energy of this magnitude does, which is move what has been unmovable. But do not use the energy carelessly. The mask you have been wearing in any relationship, the one that makes you easier to be around by making you less honest, that mask is going to slip under this triple conjunction regardless. The question is whether it slips on your terms or on the transit's terms. On your terms, what it reveals is a person who has found the courage to say the true thing. On the transit's terms, it might reveal something rawer and harder to recover from. Saturn will hold whichever version you produce in permanent record. Choose the version you will be comfortable seeing held there. What is the sentence? The one that has been waiting since Mercury first entered Pisces back in late February. Write it in the comments, not the softened version, the one that lived in your chest before you decided whether it was appropriate to say out loud. Someone will scroll to that comment tomorrow, carrying the same unspoken sentence in the same place, looking for confirmation that the fog is over and the fire environment is safe enough for the true thing. Your sentence is that confirmation. Mercury entered Aries tonight. What you say this week matters. The universe has spoken. What comes next is in your hands. Subscribe and turn on the bell. Mercury moves through Aries fast, and the April 20th triple conjunction is less than a week away. What unfolds in that window will determine the tone of everything that follows. You will want to be here when it arrives.